Again, Groundhog Day 2025. And yes, I'm going to talk more about the immigration issue in the U.S. Look, right now I'm not in the U.S., right? I'm in northern Israel, and we have immigration issues here too, of a different kind. We have immigration issues where Israel openly absorbs as many people as it can that want to make Aliyah, that is, they want to become Israeli citizens, and that have the qualification to do so, right? Which is, well, if they're Jewish, they can make Aliyah. If they're not Jewish, they can also make Aliyah if they go through a certain process or if they're qualified in certain other ways, okay? Um, but typically, it's a right that's easiest to obtain if you happen to be Jewish and you come to Israel. Why? Because it's a country for Jews, by Jews, about Jews. It doesn't mean that it's a Jewish law country. People don't have to obey every Jewish law to live in Israel and to be law abiding citizens, right? You don't have to observe every rule in the Torah to be a citizen of Israel. It's a secular country, right? But it has laws, right? Including immigration. And we also have an illegal immigration problem, right? We have people sneaking over the border, well, we used to, from Gaza into Israel, or coming in legally, quote unquote, through the checkpoints, but then overstaying their welcome, meaning they stay in Israel illegally, or maybe they travel to Judea and Samaria illegally, or travel there legally, but then stay there illegally past the time that their visiting permit or traveling permit expires, and they're supposed to be back in Gaza, right? Why? Well, because there are two different governments that control Gaza and the Palestinian Authority, in the Judea and Samaria. Right? Hamas runs Gaza, and the Palestinian Authority runs Judea and Samaria in areas A and the part of Area B where they have mixed control with Israel. Right? In Area C, obviously, it's Israel that controls it. But in the U.S., you don't have that problem of potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of terrorists coming into your country every single day, week, or year. Right? In Israel, it's a very real problem, and we saw it explode on October 7th. So it's not something we can take lightly here. But at the same time, we do have illegal immigrants to Israel who are mostly, moving here uh, for work because they know that Israel is a great country relatively in the region to earn a good living from most people, not everybody, but for most people, to have some kind of basic income and food and shelter and medicine at relatively livable wages. Not always, but for most people, including most illegal immigrants as well as legal immigrants to Israel. And there are illegal immigrants in Israel. How do they get here? Well, they come across the border from Jordan, or they fly in and they overstay their visa, right? Or they take a boat in from Cyprus or some other place and they overstay their visa, and they're illegal immigrants at that point. Does Israel automatically deport every single one? No, there's a due process, right? Just like there is in the U.S. normally. Do whether you support or oppose the idea of mass deportations of millions of people living in America right now, think about the consequences of doing it, right? A lot of people who voted for it also voted for the same candidate who promised he would do this, Trump, because he said he would make the prices of things go down, like basic goods. He hasn't, right? He said he would do it on day one. He hasn't. Not that I would expect it to happen on day one, but he hasn't, right? And the thing is, when Biden came into office, everything was a disaster on day one, according to Trump. But when Trump comes into office, nothing is fixed on day one, and somehow the people that were accusing Biden of destroying the country on day one don't say a word when Trump doesn't fix the things he said he would do on day one. Now, again, this isn't an anti-Trump video, okay? It's really not. It's just made to make you reflect on the reality of the consequences of actually deporting 10, 15 million 10, 15 million people in America who for the most part are paying taxes and working hard, honest jobs. They literally make the food that you put on your table if you are living in America. Right? They're harvesting the food, they're planting the food, they're growing the food. They are the field labor in America's farms. And they're vital to the food production and the sustenance of the United States And by that right, much of the world that depends on the United States' ability to produce such huge amounts of food as to sell it around the world at subsidized prices. Like the government pays American farmers to not grow things because there's such an abundance of things growing in America, which of course belies the whole shtick of why food prices are high when you have an abundance of food. The only issue is distribution. And distribution does not have to go up 20, 30, 40% when the price of gas for the cars, oil, has not gone up so much since the quote unquote pandemic, right? Markets go up and down all the time. So the excuse that the price of making a pound of bread or whatever, hot dogs or hamburgers or whatever it might be, cornflakes, it's not that much more than it was back in 2020. It's companies gouging prices because they can. They've been recorded on recordings multiple times since the pandemic hit that's why they have record profits, because they're gouging prices because they can. And that's really a shame. It belies the whole concept of the supposedly regulated market. It is regulated in favor of the corporates, the big, huge corporations that don't care about the little person. It's not in favor of small businesses, medium-sized businesses. If your corporation has less than 10,000 people in it or 1,000 people, anything less than 500 people, you're definitely not a big deal. And between 500 and 1,000, you're only a big deal if you happen to be running like an AI company that has like massive amounts of, investment capital from the biggest, wealthiest people in the country. Or something similar to that, right? Some amazing medical innovation company that's worth, hundreds of billions because your drug is so powerful that it's going to help save a lot of lives or whatever at a very high price, right? So immigrants, again, like I understand where the desire to restrict immigration comes from, illegal immigration, but you have to look at the real cost of it and realize that, again, it's really hypocritical for the U.S. to tell these people who did everything they could get into the U.S. for work and to pay taxes and to be law-abiding citizens, to tell them to go home. Also, when you consider the fact that many of these people are escaping countries where the United States played a huge role in causing the problems that they have, right? I love America. It's an awesome country. There's no question about it. It's a great place. But we can't avoid the historical responsibility from not long ago, in the 80s, 90s, and thousands already, and even until today, that the United States has in playing a role in keeping the economies of Central and South America down. It has made countless bad deals with rulers and dictators, or whatever you want to call them, in South America and Central America over the decades, that, yes, on the one hand, favored the U.S. economically, but on the other hand, in the long term, harmed the U.S. because it caused so many problems for those countries that they chose other leadership that was not in line with the U.S. politics. For example, Venezuela, which used to be the richest country in all of South America, and now is the poorest, or one of, if not the poorest. And that causes people to escape Venezuela and come to the U.S. because the U.S. made the relationship with Venezuela untenable after a while. Yes, the rich were very rich and happy. The middle class were doing very, very well. But the poor were suffering incorrigibly. And it had to be fixed. And look, the socialists that took over in Venezuela, look what they did. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
I just realized something.